And joining me today is Patrik Öhlund. He's the head of the Sustainability Committee, as well as the CEO of NodePol, as you just heard about in the previous panel. So thanks for joining me, Patrik.
Thank you, Dean. I'm really excited to be part of both this event and the previous ones. And I have to say, it's very encouraging to hear all the positive feedback we received on the sustainability strategy so far, both here and in the previous events. Yeah. So really encouraging. I think you feel the same.
Excellent. Yeah, so, I totally do. Totally. So just real quick. So what we're going to do here, let me just summarize really fast, and then we're going to jump in. I just want to make sure we're conscious of people's time. These are the 5 initiatives that we have. Just you can see the summary in here. Now, Patrik is going to lead us into a definition on each of them for you to think, and then we're going to kick off that session. So first, unify the industry on sustainability, vision, and actions. And then we're going into make renewable energy available everywhere, define sustainable data center framework, drive sustainability through procurement, and achieve radical efficiency through innovation. Okay, so Patrik, take us on here.
Yeah, let's get started right away. So the first initiative really lays the foundation for all the other initiatives. And this work has already started, as you heard. So what we want to do here is really to establish an industry-wide commitment to a common vision. And it seems like a lot of people are actually supporting that idea. We want to unify our action plans and also compound the effect of community actions. And we have also talked about that we can do more together. So what we would like to hear now is to hear what you think about this initiative and this focus area. If you have any sort of concrete specific ideas on actions for how we can do this. And we will continue to use the chat box for you to provide input on this initiative. So without further delay, I think we should just ask everyone to fire off their ideas on this part. And by the way, Dean, I also have to say I love the sort of parallel discussion that has been ongoing during the entire event. People have really been exchanging ideas already. And we will collect all this and work with it further and analyze it.
Excellent.
So please provide your input.
And so, and Patrik and I are going to be talking about the things that are popping up here. So as you throw things into chat, again, just think about what does it take for us to unify the industry on sustainability and the vision and the actions that need to be done. I know there are people in here that have some great ideas. And so let's start with the first one. Jeff has thrown up here saying, is there a green pledge? Should it be endorsed by individuals or companies? What do you think about that, Patrik?
I think both. I think the iMasons community provides a good framework for individuals to do it as business professionals. But I also think it's important to have leading companies sign up to this pledge also, because it's at the end of the day, it's really the decisions in the boardrooms that will make a difference, and people or companies as entities would have to sign up for it too. But I think it starts with us as people. I mean, the boards of directors are also people, right?
So Michael Clutter said IT plus OT plus security minus unified standards or leads to unified standards. So, and the boardroom, again, Mark Adams was saying is key.
Yeah.
Yep. And Tom was talking about our vision is to encompass all aspects of sustainability, environmental, social, and governance. Agreed.
Yeah, I think that is important. That's also something we discussed when we created this document. And I feel, just from listening into what people think about the vision, I think it resonates with that broader context for most people.
Yeah, and to go back to the first one was said that, you know, individual versus companies. What I love about iMasons right now is that we do leave our companies at the door and we connect as professionals. And it's really about enabling our members to connect, grow, and give back. But we also have just incredible foundation partners, right? Our partner community are the companies that are behind this. They're supporting this both with their pocketbooks as well as with their initiatives and their engines. And I love that, you know, that I think that this vision, if we can go back and really make sure we're getting awareness, visibility on the vision itself, that's going to open dialogue. That dialogue is going to bring more and more people into it. And as John Tassilo was saying, you know, bringing the government, bringing in the public sector into these conversations is crucial because they set policy. You know, we're not regulated right now. and we're self-regulating, and we want to continue to do that. And so I think that how do we go back and make sure that people are aligned on what we're doing and the goods that's happening there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also see that John is referring to some of the standards on sustainability, and I've also noticed during the entire session today in this EMEA summit that there's been a lot of references made to existing standards. So I think point here that people are trying to make is that there are already a lot of good stuff out there already. So we just need to bring it all together and bring people's mindset together, going in the same direction. That is what this initiative is all about.
Yeah, Mark Adams was talking about the Microsoft vision of being carbon negative and leading from the top. That empowers those to be creative and innovative and achieve those goals. And we're going to talk about that in the 5th initiative, which I think is that radical efficiency, but I totally agree. You know, one of the things that I really loved about the last 2 summits is just the senior leadership that's coming in here to give their perspective on the vision. That alone is providing an endorsement, or at least a motivation and a push that this is the right direction.
Yeah,
what we're working on here.
Very strong support, both from leadership and from other people.
So, folks, your ideas, keep putting them in here. We're getting quite a few into this.
I'm looking at what Tom is writing about legislation and EU policy, and I think my view is, and I think John mentioned that before, is that the EU Commission, they are really being proactive about IT and sustainability. And I think we as an industry should try to find ways to join forces with the politicians because I think we share the same objective. And then we can do it in a more proactive and, like you said, self-regulating way.
Yeah, and Hans just said that, you know, years ago, PUE provided that push. So what's the next thing that's going to provide that push? So we need strong metrics. I agree with that. Yeah, we need the next levels of this. Okay, so we're going to wrap this one up, and we're going to go into the next initiative.
Yeah, this is all about making renewable energy available everywhere. And I mean, today, many companies are already making great efforts to find renewable energy for their data center operations, but it's simply not possible everywhere today. There are technical challenges. We talked about grid storage earlier in this session, and the fact that both wind and solar are intermittent sources of power.
Right.
So what we want to do here is really to find ways to work together across the industry and also together with policymakers to enable access to cost-effective solutions in all markets globally. And once again, this is, I wouldn't say unattainable, but it's for sure it is challenging in certain markets. So we would be really interested again to hear what you all think about this initiative, if you have any ideas on actions on how we can do this. So continue to just do what you're already doing. Post your ideas in the chat.
You know, and as we're getting these things coming in, the thing that really jumps out to me is the stark differences between the different regions. You know, we just heard about Africa, and you know, where they've got less than 200 megawatts, 150 or 160 megawatts in the entire country, right? With more than half of that just in one portion of the country. And that's gonna grow rapidly, but they also have challenges of getting energy, not just renewable energy, but just energy in general. And so, you know, plants and those types of things. So how do you make renewable energy available to everyone everywhere when you've got you know, constraints when it comes down to you know, it's not incentivized. There may not be incentive programs aligned with the government. There may not be the right ability to build the things in the places you need. You think of the Sahara itself, lots of sun, but distribution, like where, there's just a lot of challenges across that.
And I think the two main types of challenges are, as you point out, it's regulatory and it's also technical. I think the regulatory aspect is you need to make politicians come together and create the markets, and maybe in some markets also there is a need for incentive systems, like you said. But then there is the technical challenge of making sure that you can store the solar and wind energy, so large grid scale storage systems, or as maybe in combination to what Google announced on Earth Day that they are doing in terms of actually adjusting workload based on availability of renewable power.
You know, I also look at, Jeff just brought up something here that many companies in our industry are members of REBA. So that's the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, right? Aggregating demand to drive supply. And I think that's a really interesting approach because again, if you can aggregate this stuff together, it allows you to have a larger deployment that's going to save everybody money. It makes the investors have some kind of certainty as far as what they're going to build. And so I think that's really good. And especially when you look at it, cloud players and everybody are going in these emerging markets. Think about the cloud regions that are being built. Africa, India, all across LATAM. That's where huge expansion's going on, right? Even faster than any other parts of the world. And so if we could figure out ways to leapfrog and enable renewable energy within those regions, we're making incredible progress, because right now there's barriers across that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And also during the discussions we've had with leaders from the hyperscale community, it's become very clear to me, at least. I was a bit surprised, but you would think that large companies like Google and Microsoft and so on, they are big enough to do things on their own, which they are, of course. But also these companies feel that they can achieve more by working together.
Yeah.
So that was sort of an eye-opener to me, that also the large companies are interested in working together on this.
Yep. All right, so we've got about a minute and a half left here. So more ideas, keep them coming. And by the way, all this stuff is being captured and it's going directly back into the sustainability committee that Patrik leads. So it will inform the strategy and the action plans that we're going after.
Yeah, and you have already mentioned that there is this online platform, and on that online platform you have a sustainability committee group. You have things that are being posted there already. I think John mentioned some things that he has posted there already. So just go in there, look and read and post your own ideas there as well. And we will of course bring some of the best stuff from these discussions into that platform.
Yep, and Tom also asked about, he was basically saying lots of stuff moving to the edge. I think this is an important one, where, and in cities right now, usually electricity is more expensive, as well as it's more difficult to get renewable sources themselves. So we've got to solve this both at the core data centers as well as the edge as this comes up. And I think that there's definitely ways to do this. It goes back to the first point. We've got to have some type of beyond grid scale energy storage for long durations of time, because that's the only way we're going to get cost effective and base load renewable energy. So
and for edge solutions, as have been mentioned previously I think it was during the panel discussion, it has to be integrated and be viewed as sort of a part of the entire ecosystem in the dense populated areas.
Yep, absolutely. Great. Okay, so we are going to wrap up initiative number 2. I think you guys are getting the idea here. Thanks for the input. Continue those coming in. We're going to go into initiative 3. All right, Patrik?
Yeah. So this is really about defining as an industry what are the key characteristics for a truly sustainable data center with zero impact. And again, there are many great initiatives already. There are different types of certifications. There are different types of standards. Some people know about them. Some are specialists in understanding and knowing this. But I think there is more to be done in a more accessible way, sharing these ideas and make it easier to find what are the best practices around the world for different types of cooling solutions or whatever. Heat reuse have been discussed earlier. Recycling of material is another area. So this is not so much about developing new standards, because there are already a lot of good standards out there already. This is about, as a community or as an industry, coming together and agreeing what are the best standards and the best practices and the best way forward.
Yeah, and I think our question to the community here is that taking those best practices, how do we create something that's a guideline? Because I don't see this as a potential standard that has to be done. This is enabling people to figure out what is the right bar, and not just about how you design it or how you implement it or how you operate it, but also the entire supply chain and the life cycle of that data center. It needs to be that whole picture, just like Daniela was talking about. And so how do we think about doing that? Because we never really have. It's all been about, look at my PUE, look how efficient this is, increasing my utilization. Great, but the most efficient data center in the world is the one that's not built.
Exactly.
So how do
But
we?
I think what you just mentioned and what have been said before also about the full life cycle perspective, I think is crucial here, and not just looking at the sort of obvious things like energy consumption, but also what is the land use, what is the impact on land use, what is the impact from concrete and steel and diesel gensets and so on.
Right, embedded carbon. Like there's just
yeah, more of a holistic view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the ideas that came back here is we should remove diesel generators from the data center. Radical changes of it, right?
Maybe that is a definition long term that we could look into. Another comment here from Michael Clutter is to move away from reactive towards predictive. And when I read predictive, I also reading using data and using machine learning and AI to optimize and do it in a more predictive way, including predictive maintenance and so on.
Nice.
I have to say I love these all these ideas. It's hard to keep up, but I will read and digest later.
Yep, maybe just use algae oil in those diesel generators. Hey, this is really about truly disrupting and innovating the way we've done it. We should not assume the way things are done. We should have a new way to approach it. Okay, so we've got about 45 seconds left in this one. So please keep throwing them in. Excellent. So Debbie, renewable energy should be connected to battery storage to allow 1 hour of off-grid. Then no need for diesel generators. Yeah, I think we need even bigger than that. It really comes down to how do we orchestrate with the grid and how do we do demand response where there's tons of UPSs and other things that can be contributing to the grid to help balance things out. So you can do the other direction. So I agree. There's some creative ways to do that. All right, here we go. Pop, even more coming in.
I had the opportunity to speak with the strategist of the TSO in Sweden earlier today, and he viewed the data center industry as a great opportunity because the industry can, compared to other industries, this industry could actually bring something back to the grid. It goes, it's a two-way connection. Nice. Speaking of collaboration between utilities.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to need to wrap this one up. So thank you. If you got any other last ideas, throw them back in. We're going to go into initiative number 4.
Yeah. So number 4 is about using procurement as a tool to drive sustainability. And this is, you can look at this from many different perspectives. One is, of course, the specs for the RFPs that have been designed with cost and reliability primarily. This is, of course, an important factor also going forward, but we also have to make sure that sustainability becomes an integral part of all procurement. And I think for those of you that are working in or has been working in a major corporation, you know that procurement and the way people in procurement are measured is really on savings. Right, exactly. So it's all financial targets, and you have to achieve those savings. So this is also about how do you govern the procurement organizations in a way so that you don't just maximize savings, but you also maximize the sustainability impact from those procurement efforts.
Yeah, and I look at in my previous life where RFPs were put back out, and we expanded the framework of how we do site selection to ensure that sustainability is day one, and that included renewable energy and environments and delta T's and on equipment and things, so that can all be considered. But I think you're right. There's a change in the really the procurement side that has to happen. First off, how they're incentivized, what you said. How they're, how they're actually driven. So I think that they want to do those things, but they're also measured in a different way.
Yeah. I also see the question here from Jeff about is this about procurement for colo space services by end users, or is it procurement of equipment by colo providers? And in my opinion, or way of thinking, this is both. This is both about procuring services like colocation services, for instance, by the hyperscalers, but it's also about procuring material and hardware and software.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. It's really think of the holistic life cycle. So you're going to design a data center, you're going to implement it, you're going to operate it, right? You're going to retire it at some point. And so that whole process up front of being able to say, what am I procuring? And then the process of now I'm going to be procuring a data center itself. What is the motivation for it? How do I select? So it's all the above.
Yeah. Hans is bringing up total cost of ownership instead of just looking at maybe the first dollar amount for the purchase. And then, of course, the total cost of ownership would have to factor in sustainability values as well.
Exactly, because right now that's a financial metric. So how do you do this from an ecological standpoint as well? And luckily, I think that there's so many large corporations that have made this as a de facto standard. I remember when I was over at Uber, we said 100% renewable day one, and it needs to be cost effective. It needs to be at the same price or less than the grid.
Yeah.
And guess what? People got innovative and creative and figured it out, and we achieved it. And people said we couldn't. Well, that's when you let these big minds start thinking about a problem. Engineers, right? Business people, they solve the problems. You just got to give them the ability.
Dina, I think you just made the perfect cue to the last initiative, number
Excellent.
5.
All right, let's go into initiative 5.
Yeah, and with your perfect cue, this is all about innovation. And maybe for at least the engineers in the call, I think, and maybe for everybody else as well, this is maybe the most fun initiative, because this is really about challenging yourself, challenging others, and use the collective brain power on the industry to challenge old ways of doing things, and inspiring smart people and teams and companies to find new and innovative solutions. When we have discussed this, one of the most important aspects of this focus area is really what kind of constraints are you designing under? Because normally you design under economic constraint, and you do not use ecological constraints. And we have discussed the idea to use and bring radical improvements to end-to-end efficiency by designing under artificial constraints. So one example could be to imagine that there is no more diesel or water available in the world. What do you do? How do you design a data center if you cannot access diesel or water? What's that design? What does it look like?
Yep.
So again, this is about not just doing the small incremental improvements. They are obviously also important, but this is about leapfrogging and really challenge yourselves and your teammates to think outside the box.
Yep, and just a little bit of perspective. When we had the leadership summit around this stuff, where we were creating this, the things that popped out is the scarcity. Designing under scarcity drives radical efficiency. If you had no more water, if you only had the power you had, what would you do? Where today we have plenty, but we really don't. When you think about it from an environmental standpoint, we're consuming more and more and more. We have to make sure that we're doing this the most efficient way possible. We should be using everything that's built already. We should be leveraging circular economy. We should be thinking about what the next design is, and also challenging every paradigm. We talked about, generators in the data centers. Is there another way to do it? Is there a way to tie with the grid that can be more stable? We don't need to back up the grid with another energy source. There has to be radical ways to rethink how we've done this stuff. And that's what we're looking for now. So,
Tom is proposing hackathons for sustainability and innovation think tanks. And
love that.
I remember, I love that too. And I remember in the America Summit, there was this idea of creating some sort of X Prize for radical innovations.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, if we could come together and basically say we're going to fund these things, that goes back to the $1 billion innovation fund from Microsoft. They're ready to do it. They want to go find these ideas that they don't know exactly how to get this, carbon payback by, everything by 2050. Like they've got to think about it. And like Clay was saying, moonshots here are things that get people excited and thinking.
And I remember Noelle Walsh from Microsoft, she actually urged people to apply for money, almost, in particular for radical innovation.
Oh, so Nautilus was just brought back up here. That's a data center company in Sacramento that is putting liquid cooled data centers on barges, right? And they just got 100 million in funding. So or Stockton, yes, sorry. So great stuff. But that's the thing is, how do we take the entire environment? How do we really rethink how this is done? How do we break the norms that we've had before? And there will be debate. Yes. Want to see the raw numbers on data centers on barges. Somebody believes there's 100 million that just went into it. Either way, it comes down to the sum of all these things are going to get us this radical efficiency. All right.
Michelle proposed to put them under the water. I think Microsoft is trying just that, doing under subsea data centers.
Right, under the ocean. Yeah, I remember seeing that. And I remember back 10 years ago, the original idea of having data centers on ships, right? These old Navy vessels that are already really resilient. So we'll see where this all goes. Okay, so we've got about 20 seconds left. You've got our ideas, throw them back in. This is great, by the way, good content. Between all three of these summits, I think you've got a mountain of input, Patrik, for the Sustainability Committee. Yeah. Okay.
Again, I have to come back to Tom's comment about the hackathon. I like that idea. To do a hackathon that is focused on sustainability.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much, folks. You get the idea that of what we're doing on these initiatives. So thank you. A round of applause for all of our folks on the back end that make the magic. We could not look as good or do as good as we're doing here without the folks on here. So Jeff, Simon, Karina, Adrian, Jen, thank you again. You've done this 3 times and we pulled it off every time. All right. Well, thank you very much, folks, for attending. We will see you. We will see you on our next webcast. I'm sure that's going to be coming up here in the next couple months. And please stay on the platform, stay engaged, and make sure that you're participating within what we're doing within this vision. We really believe strongly that there's going to be some very positive results from it. So thank you very much.